All right, Dani. In true fashion of the show, you're late.
Yes, I know. I was just thinking, I was like, I need to acquire like another like awful habit so we can start talking about that, because I'm pretty sure this is just going to always be on brand for my life. Like my 2025 goal is to work on my time management, and I've been good up until today.
I admit it, though. You have a cold though, so I'll give you some slack.
Yeah.
And you've used up your credit.
I have.
So now we're even.
We're even, and so
you're an hour, so you might. I was 2 hours, but you have your clips of like 15, 20s.
41 minutes late today.
Okay. So. Yeah, everybody hear that? Dani's 41. Used up her credit.
I have. I'm done. I need
so she has to be on time.
It's the holidays.
Beginning in 2025.
It's the holidays. Give me a break.
Right.
I didn't have any gas in my car. I had to drive all the way across town.
And you just got back from New York. How was that?
It was really good. I came back with a small like cold, I think.
That's because you were partying every night in the city.
No,
That's what
I
I
think
heard.
everyone that I was around ended up getting this just mild cold, and it was like rainy and cold in New York, and it was hot. So I think like the dramatic temperature changes definitely had something to do
right.
with it. I'm good. I'm feeling a lot better today though.
Good.
So we're good.
Well, I got wine, so
I mean the
wine will make you feel good.
I don't take cough syrup. It's just wine.
A little Pinot Noir.
It's the same. It's the same, but better.
So today we have our newest platinum sponsor, Laney Solutions, the company that specializes in recruitment of people capital. Everybody needs people, drive organizations. And so Kathleen is focused, and Laney Solutions is focused on the parking industry. So,
Kathleen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to finally meet you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me here. And yes, I feel like it's a real disservice to not have known you before this.
I know. I agree.
I'm shocked because Kathleen knows everybody.
I'm rethinking everything that I haven't met her before.
I'm trying to think back to if we've ever crossed paths at a conference before, or I'm sure that we have. Like, even the person that I was talking to on the way over here, they were like, "How do you not know Kathleen? Like, she knows everyone. You know everyone." And I'm like, clearly.
I should have looked through my LinkedIn messages because I probably messaged everybody in the industry by now. And I have all of the history. So I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. I'm sure I would be surprised if we haven't had interaction on LinkedIn.
So this show is part of our continued spotlight of women in parking. So we have Kathleen Laney, who is a business owner in the parking business, and it's a woman-owned business.
It is.
And you're a sole proprietor, right? Just you?
Just me.
Just you. So I can remember when you came on the scene. How long have you been in the parking business?
The first position I had to recruit was in June of 2014.
Okay.
2014. So I remember you came on to the industry. I remember you reached out and geez, like you came on pretty quick. And then the next thing you know, you talk to other people, everybody knows. I think there was 2 recruiting firms.
Yes.
At the time.
And that other recruiting firm also did a little bit more than what I do. I believe in doing what I'm good at. And they did also other HR consulting services in addition to recruiting.
Okay.
Where have been only focused on recruiting, do not have really any other intentions to focus on anything else. I do have intentions to expanding my team.
Oh, that's great news.
Wow, so you're recruiting.
You heard it here.
Kathleen's recruiting.
I'm recruiting for myself this time.
Yeah.
Except I already have everyone hand earmarked.
Yep. So a little bit about Laney Solutions recruiting firm. Do you recruit specifically just for the parking industry, or?
Now it really seems to be mostly parking, but I have worked a lot with adjacent industries like tolling, smart cities.
Oh, so like mobility stuff, like the broader. Wow. Okay.
Especially
I didn't know
when,
that.
Say, a mobility company is looking to kind of dip its toe a little bit more into the parking sphere, that's when they will definitely come to me.
Right.
And I love to help them out to, get the best talent. But bread and butter is really parking industry companies. The other interesting thing I work with, besides obviously the various verticals within parking, airports, universities, municipalities, is one thing I've really enjoyed working with our investment banks on PPPP.
Interesting.
deals.
Tell us about that.
For those who don't know,
Yeah.
Public-private partnerships.
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like
P3s.
that. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I like to say each P
Yeah.
yeah, public-private
partnership.
partnerships. Got it.
P3s.
I feel like when I first came on the scene in 2014, it was like everyone was talking about those.
They were.
And that was fun because people wanted something different than the standard director of operations role. It gave them really good visibility to investment banks from all over the world, as well as very high-profile facilities.
So for our listeners, a P3 project might be, and I'll use an example because I was involved in one at one point, was the Sacramento Kings, the NBA team in Sacramento, was threatening to move out of Sacramento if they didn't get a new stadium. Their stadium was old, or their arena, sorry. Stadium is football, basketball, and hockey are arena. So get my nomenclature right. I know. So the city didn't have the money to do that. So how they started out doing it was putting together their parking assets and then having usually an equity firm that's got the money, the financial piece, and then they team up with a parking piece. And then you put together, like, they'll lease out for like 90 years. They'll take over the parking. So another example is the meters in Chicago. Chicago sold off their meters. Morgan Stanley teamed up with Laz, and they've operated those meters. So that's a public-private partnership.
Well, there's a lot of controversy behind that, isn't there?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, those are just some examples. I think what happened in Sacramento is the city got the ideas. They had RFQs and things, and then they formed their own 501c and created their own entity that was outside the city and did it themselves, and then funded the arena through that. So they were trying to fund the arena through a financial firm that was going to take over their parking, like Chicago.
So the first deal I worked on that was a P3 deal was with a urban university and an investment bank. There was, I guess, a significant amount of capital investment that needed to happen in the facilities. And so they created that loan entity. And I hired the
So you recruit for those entities that are going to ultimately run the parking operation or whatever it may be.
That's recruit cool. For very cool.
I didn't know that.
I learned
something new today about Kathleen.
That is one thing I struggle with, is that a lot of what I do doesn't need to be in front of everyone's face necessarily. There's a lot of confidentiality, a lot of nuance there. Right. So I do try to be very respectful of that.
Right. So before we get too down the road, you always ask your standard signature question.
Because
See, we know each other. I know what you're trying to do.
We gave each other the look.
I know.
Because we want the industry to know not just like who you are and what you do, but like how, because we have a lot of most of our listeners are industry based, but we do have a small listener base outside the industry, and so we want to be able to give quality information to those as well. And for those who might not know your story, because I personally don't know your stories, and I love hearing people's story of how they got into the business. Like, where were you before, and how did you get into this wonderful, amazing world of parking?
Yeah, see, I know Kathleen, but I don't think I know how you got into parking.
So tell us.
And the follow-up question to that is going to be, what do you tell people that you do?
Wait to ask your question.
I know.
Wait your turn.
I know.
So how I got here is through a very, probably something that no one really wants to try to emulate. My background after university was, I actually worked, my first job out of school was working.
University, that sounds Canadian. Yeah.
I love
You
it.
get a little Canada in you.
I do. I was
can hear
born there.
Okay. That explains it. Okay.
And my first job was there.
Okay.
I worked for a major Canadian investment bank, as Casey mentioned, on Bay Street.
Right.
It was fantastic. I loved it. I worked in marketing, though. I did not work in recruiting. I had no intention of ever doing anything like this. I worked there for 3 years doing marketing communications. That was great. This was in 2005 I started there.
Right.
And the highlight of my job is I worked on the 63rd floor of the building I worked in, which was towards the very top for Toronto. And I would have to hand deliver press releases for approval to the CEO, which at 22, you're like, yeah.
You're right.
Right.
Except the fact that I thought the more senior you are, the higher are you up in a building.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No, because this was post 9/11. So the marketing department was on the 63rd floor. The C-suite team was on the 7th floor.
Oh, so that was like a strategic move.
That was a fire ladder consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Who can get out of the building the fastest?
That's right.
And we did have fire alarms or fire drills where we would have to go all the way down. So we were all informed, especially the ladies, to bring an extra pair of shoes, which was appreciated.
Yeah.
Right.
And then everyone would wait at the bottom to then take an elevator back up.
Okay, so back to
Yes.
Wow.
how you your unique story into parking.
I did marketing, and then I got into doing marketing for a recruiting firm. So that's how I learned how to recruit.
Okay.
And I did my master's in HR management too during that time.
Interesting.
But when I was living in Hoboken,
Now you went to Syracuse University.
that was my
right?
undergrad.
So you're an Orangeman.
I'm an orange woman. Actually,
You're
we're
an orange
orange.
woman.
No,
Sorry.
no, they
Whoa.
changed
The
it.
women in parking, John.
I know. Shit,
Actually,
here
Where'd
I
you, get,
go.
where'd you get your master's?
From a very small liberal arts college called Nazareth College of Rochester.
I've heard of Nazareth.
My
Yeah.
dad was a professor there. I actually went during the Great Recession
Interesting.
because
2008.
yeah,
So
those were hard times for someone working in a recruiting
that was
firm.
the financial collapse for some of you that don't, the housing bubble.
Yeah, that was rough. So that was how I learned the recruiting aspect. I had just moved, I'd finished my master's, just moved to Hoboken. I was working as an HR director for a financial services
So you know
firm.
we can calculate your age now.
Oh, everyone
Right?
should
College,
know.
graduating,
I am
master's,
42 years
2008.
old and 3
Okay.
months.
Wow, you're young. Yeah,
That's a good thing.
that is a good thing.
Yeah.
Trust me, I want to be 40 in my 40s again.
John, how old are you?
I forgot. But
We'll be able to calculate your
there
age.
is a
Don't worry.
tree
We'll go
in
back.
there
We'll
is
go
a tree
back.
in the backyard that
You can
I
see
can
the
go
rings?
back. I figured it out. So I on my birthday I go back one year.
We're gonna have to count the rings.
Rings.
Is this Benjamin?
Do we have
Button?
to kill the tree to do that?
I've probably killed the tree.
Jeez.
Anyway.
All right, back on topic here.
So I was living in Hoboken, working for a Midtown Manhattan for a financial service firm. It was 2 weeks into the job. It was December 15th, 2013. I'm leaving my apartment building on my way to work. It was a Monday morning around 7 a.m. And as I crossed the street and step back onto the curb, I slip and break my ankle in 3 places
no.
and,
Oh my God.
and dislocate my foot.
Wow.
And
So that was I broke my ankle. It's the most painful thing I've ever
it
gone
also
through.
doesn't always have a very good healing outcome.
No.
Right.
But it did.
Oh, good.
Well, I mean, I have arthritis, but
Yeah. Well.
But you're a snowshoer, so
I've done 514ers since.
Oh,
and hiked
wow.
the Inca
Yeah.
Trail. So
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you break your ankle. So does that mean the recovery took you away from the job? And
I couldn't get to work. And that was back way before an HR director could be working from home.
Right.
Yeah.
We're working from home. What didn't exist.
No. And sitting at home when you can't do anything, because in New York City, if you don't walk, you don't.
You don't want.
Right.
Yeah, that's the culture.
Wow.
So,
and that's probably before Uber, right?
actually, no. It was
Okay.
right around when Uber started in New York City.
Interesting.
2015.
I know because I took it for the first time then.
Okay.
I didn't know how it
so
worked.
now you're
So
at,
walking is a big part of
So
the
now you're
life
out
in New York. So
you're out
I
of
get what you're
work.
saying.
So how did that go? Did they just
Well,
let you
since
go,
I had
or-
started 2 weeks
Oh,
prior
so you
to
were-
that, I literally was not covered with FMLA. And so they didn't have to pay me. They didn't have to keep me on. And
So that's shitty.
well, that's
Did they keep you on? They
No.
didn't keep you on. Okay.
no.
So this is ironic because I have somebody that I hired about a year ago, I think, and they broke their ankle a couple weeks before they started. And it put their whole, they didn't even start yet. I gave her an offer. She accepted. I think Dani knows who she is.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm piecing it all together. No pun intended.
Yeah. So,
But you're a good person, John, versus
yeah. So she
Like
had
she
to
didn't break it; she shattered it.
I know.
in
Yeah, we're talking about
pieces.
Tanya Lang, and she's
Oh, I
awesome.
didn't know that she had. So
yeah,
I
so
had,
she was, I think, on vacation with Joe,
Yep.
and they went hiking, and she came down wrong on her ankle.
That's a
And
better story than just crossing the
But
street.
it was, I can totally see. I mean, it was kind of like we were excited. She's starting, and then she went through a rough period to recover, and we stood behind it and said,
It was-
"Don't
it-
worry.
yeah.
I mean, your job is your job." So.
I mean, I just did that the other day, Kathleen. I just got back from New York, and I didn't break my ankle, thank goodness. But I just stepped off a curb, and I flew. Like I tripped, and I flew. And I my knee right now, my entire shin is
my
so
God.
bruised,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not covered. I went a whole year without insurance. That's a whole
Oh,
story.
wow.
But
well, as self-employed, I feel the health insurance thing.
yes, oh yeah. And I was someone was like, "Oh my God, do you need to go to the hospital?" And I was like, because I face planted straight into the street.
Holy shit.
And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm like, can't go to the hospital. I don't have any insurance. Are you crazy? And
You
this whole thing.
need to take care of yourself. We
But
need
that's
you
the
on
thing,
this
just
show.
tripping off. There are so many. So I feel you on that. You just,
That's
yeah.
So Tanya came and I got to ride she was on a scooter for a little while.
Yeah. Yep.
I did
I didn't have
I
a
did
scooter.
speed trials up and down the
I walker.
Oh,
They didn't really have the scooters were not so prevalent at that point.
yeah.
So I literally had one of those walkers
No
that you
crutches?
could wheel. I did have crutches, but the problem was that I was actually in the hospital for a week before they could operate because of I had not just broken 3 bones. I had also dislocated my foot, and then with them popping the
God.
foot back in, all the swelling. If they opened my ankle up to put the plates and screws, they wouldn't be able to close it. So I spent that year's. I had surgery the day before Christmas that year, and spent Christmas
So that was
high as a kite,
miserable.
undilauded.
yeah, yeah.
But it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Because so you
So
didn't-
something horrible happened and then you wound up in parking.
Well,
so yeah. What then?
how did that lead to
yes.
parking? So one of the benefits from my first few careers, both in marketing and in recruiting, is that I knew how to use LinkedIn. I started using LinkedIn in 2007.
LinkedIn is powerful, people. I tell people that all the time.
It's everything. I don't mean to sound dramatic.
But I tell people here, and some companies don't do this, but I tell my folks, start building your own brand. You can build a brand. Some people are fearful about building a brand because they think it's going against their company, but it's really not.
It's
Right.
helping their company.
That's
actually.
right. You build your brand, focus on your brand. Also, you can do it in such a way where it's beneficial to the company that you work for. Some companies are fearful of it because they feel like if the person builds their brand to a point that they're going to be that more sought after and they're going to lose them. But, at the end of the day, if you have a culture that drives that people want to be at, then ultimately they're going to stay.
Company culture, leadership.
That's right. And
Or it might not be brand loyalty, but there's company loyalty.
Oh, brand loyalty and parking. That'll be a question
You
for
came from
Kathleen.
we fight about brand loyalty all the time. So we can talk about this. And
Okay, so you break your ankle, you take so now how does parking come into this?
Well, I literally was just sitting in a bed for I did not put weight on my ankle for 4 months.
Wow.
Oof.
There was a medical.
Yeah.
I would go
mishap
nuts.
So you had
I gotta keep moving.
They had me walk on my foot before they had x-rayed it to make sure it was fully healed. And so it rebroke. And that restarted everything from zero.
Wow.
But it gave me more time.
Yeah.
So what I did was I know how to use recruiting. I know how back before LinkedIn had all these sophisticated filters and tools, how recruiters used LinkedIn was using Boolean search. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that.
I've never heard of that.
Same.
So,
Boolean sounds like some kind of tea that you put in your tea and it makes you woo.
you thinking bouillon?
Yeah. That's what he's thinking. He's thinking bouillon.
I'm thinking
yes.
chicken bouillon and beef bouillon, right?
That's not something that you put. If you put that in your tea, we got to talk.
Yeah, and you put some garlic in there.
In your tea?
You got a cold. You should there's a mixture.
Awful.
You should put the bouillon with hot water and
called
garlic.
Soup.
Yeah.
I think I'd go with NyQuil.
Yeah.
Probably.
Or Pinot Noir, but that's just my
or pickle
preference.
shots.
So no. Okay.
So Boolean search is the use of the modifiers and or not. I know I'm like the parentheses, the quotation marks, and that lets you drill down using very specific terms. So, for example, like as a recruiter today, and I still love Boolean, you use quotation marks around parking industry, and then you use and.
Right.
And say sales or something. And that will find sales roles usually within the parking industry or information about sales and parking. So that was how you could navigate LinkedIn back then. It was a lot more complicated. You have to have a lot more understanding. I learned Boolean when I took a logic class in college.
Okay. I missed that class.
It was actually one of the most useful classes. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Undergrad or
undergrad?
Okay.
I thought those logic charts you used to do in high school?
Yep.
I thought those were really fun, so I wanted to take logic in college. Had no idea it would ever be useful to me, and it ended up being everything. So I could navigate the internet, LinkedIn, all those sites to find very specific information about people before other people did. And that is how I came across my first client, which was a parking mobile app, not around anymore. Been a lot of consolidation.
Right.
But the CEO of that company, I had contacted on LinkedIn and had networked with them, talking about various hiring career topics. And they ended up hiring me to find their COO and a regional sales manager.
Wow.
Now, while I was in bed trying to fill those roles, Laney Solutions actually hadn't been created at that point. I would call people up and had so many instances of people saying, no, I'm not really interested in that job, but we need help recruiting.
Oh,
no one's doing this.
Yeah.
Can you help us? Within a month, I literally got 2 additional clients that way.
Interesting. So then you had an epiphany, a light went on and said, this is an industry that's in need for a recruiting niche. Right.
And I knew I had never worked internally in parking, which, was like a handicap at that point. But what I did was I called up every single person I could get a hold of.
Oh, you did. I remember.
I remember calling up Sean Conrad. I knew nothing about parking and asked him if he would tell me what he thought about the parking industry and trends and stuff. And he was so friendly. And that's what made parking something I wanted to actually put all that time and energy to. I literally read everything that was out there. I mean, there's not as much stuff then as there are today. But I learned as much about parking. I was living in Hoboken. I met a director of operations at Laz who took me on some tours just so that,
Could get the lay of the land.
Absolutely, because once again, I actually have never worked in parking.
Right.
So what's unique, since you kind of touched on recruiting outside of parking, is there a uniqueness that you've developed that's different? I mean, how is parking different than others, or is it the same? And then for the listeners, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you can see that's how, is that?
I also have resources on my website who help tell or explain and encourage people of what to include on a LinkedIn profile, things to engage with others.
Okay.
So I want to see, I've fallen in love with this industry so much. I just want everyone to kick butt.
Right. So is there a uniqueness? I like it. Kick butt.
Yeah.
I do that sometimes.
Sometimes.
So what's unique about recruiting and parking
versus outside of parking?
Niche.
Or is there any uniqueness?
So it's understanding the niche. So I I was a recruiter for the ASPCA.
Okay.
What is that?
The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Come on, John, you haven't heard the song.
Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah.
Sorry. My wife's going to hear this and probably go, because cruelty to animals is like, yeah.
We're going to motivate her to adopt more dogs.
I have an idea.
Oh, no.
If you don't want the animal at home, encourage her to oversee feral cats.
Oh, she's not the one that we need to convince. It's John that we got to convince. You guys have what, 5?
Yeah,
5
we
dogs?
have 5, but one just passed away.
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
4.
Oreo.
So time to get that
We
feral
love you,
cat.
Oreo.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So when I was working at the ASPCA, I hired every type of role, from the VP of Communications, who had been at the Keith Olbermann show back when it was still a thing.
Olbermann, yeah.
Yeah.
Does he still exist? Or?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The show does not, right?
Yeah, his ratings were
No, because he
tanked.
didn't even exist back at that point. Like this gentleman had.
I think our ratings are better than his.
You got to keep it that way.
And so then I would also hire people to oversee the feral cat program in Brooklyn.
Oh.
So I learned more about
That is
feral
amazing.
cats and all the diseases that they can spread and why it's really important to get them neutered.
Yep.
Right.
So spay and neuter your cats.
Yep. And dogs.
And dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's not as much problem with feral dogs, especially in an urban place.
Yeah.
Like, so this was in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So is recruiting parking professionals like
Slightly less
cats?
disturbing than the feral
Right.
cat information that I
Should we
came
get
across.
should we get everybody neutered in parking? I'm sorry. I had to throw that in there. Come on.
Only if we
guys
can
laugh.
get Bob Barker to give a
that's funny.
public service announcement.
Yeah. Remember, it's listen to this show at your own risk, right?
I mean, we need to do some type of. Never mind. Let's different topic. Kathleen, you're an amazing person. Like you've had like a really incredible. You have an incredible background. I did not know that about you, and I think that's a big job.
Or the feral cats.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
I had no idea. So that's really really incredible. So there is a uniqueness to recruiting and parking. I do have a question, a follow-up question to that. How often do you recruit from outside of the industry?
Great question.
Into the industry.
So I will say I am hired less often for people to do that than people actually do, because they're coming to me for that parking industry experience.
Right.
Not to say I've done a lot of different type of roles. So for a role like a network engineer, the parking industry background is not so important.
Right.
So now employers from outside the industry generally will not contact me except if they're like part of polling. But in terms of me looking for candidates from outside the industry, it's not super common. Now, for example, for some sales roles, an employer might be open to somebody who has relevant experience. So that might be a security technology company or something, tangential
Right.
skills or technology.
And why do you think most of them want industry experience? Is it because it's the ramp up period is longer?
Yeah. So especially for remote roles, which, have always actually been prevalent, especially in like sales type roles. Like that was always around where people were in their region. And people don't have the time to handle. Now, I have an example of somebody I know who hired 2 people on their team who were not part of parking, then really wanted the next person to have that parking industry experience to negate all of the other time they were having to teach parking.
Right.
Yep.
So it's so nuanced. It's all about the position, all about what they're looking for. But most of the people, when they come to me, are looking for at least, some parking experience. But I do work beyond that.
So
go ahead.
I just, because this, and I love this, like I think that this is a great conversation for us to be having right now, especially because
we haven't hit the recruiting
we
side.
haven't. And I think I'm a big supporter of hiring outside of the industry, so much so that like a lot of the people that I've hired have not been in the industry.
Right.
I brought a lot of people into the industry, even in director roles, who don't have any parking.
So you've had good
background.
experience with that.
Yes, but I think leadership is important, right? And I can speak to that because I was brought into the industry in a leadership role with 0 experience. But I had incredible leadership, right? I mean, my boss at the time, she taught me, like, and I've said this like multiple times on multiple episodes, but she taught me everything, like a lot of the things that I know about parking. I mean, she rode me around and was like, this is a parking kiosk, this is an entry, this is an exit, this is LPR, she taught like the basic things that you need in parking, right? She taught me how to space count, how to deduct monthlies from your reservation, like all the basics that are so important. And so I'm a big supporter of that. So I think my next question to you is how important do you think it is for a very, like a growing industry that's growing like massively in technology and in sales and all of these different verticals, to bring in people and take the time to, because it takes a special type of person to come in the parking industry, let's be honest. But to take the time to recruit people outside of the industry and bring them in and put the time and the effort. And I know, like the logistics behind putting all the time and effort into people. And sometimes it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I have recruited for people, like say I'm recruiting for a parking tech company for a sales role, and they're saying they don't have to have parking technology. Some of the things I've encountered as challenges is, one, people outside of parking are very dismissive to the idea of working in parking.
Right.
Even if they're in like security technology, like they're like parking?
Yeah.
Parking.
Exactly.
It's my signature.
It is.
Parking.
Very much so.
All right.
So it's a lot harder to get the candidate interested. And since I'm a headhunter, essentially, like I am outreach, I do post job descriptions and job advertisements. I will tell you that's not my most effective recruiting method by far. So I do a lot of outreach having to pitch, and that is difficult because
so you're selling when you go out, you're selling our industry to people outside the industry. So
and
you're in essence a salesperson as well, trying to recruit.
Yes.
Okay, that's
recruiting
interesting.
is sales, inside and out.
Yeah.
Every part of it from.
I mean, I knew that,
Yeah.
but that's what makes parking unique, I guess, because you're probably having to sell it. People are like, parking?
Well, and even within the parking industry, like obviously there's different types of companies. Some companies have reputations than others. That doesn't mean the company's future is always going to be the same. Like, some companies excel for 3 years and then go kind of down. So I also have to sell company within parking, the companies within parking.
So when a company reaches out to you, do you like have to kind of do an interview to see if you're even going to, because you may pick and choose because you don't want to ruin your reputation, right?
Oh, no. And so the process I have took me about 7 years to develop. Like I have a very detailed questionnaire, which goes so much beyond the position. It's talking about the company's future, why a candidate who has a job already should be excited about that, because that's what I'm selling.
Wow. Okay.
So it's absolutely sales.
So you do outreach within the company before you even start searching.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Like outreach, meaning you talk to people that you're going to be working for to find that position, so you can learn as much about that company.
I try to learn everything about the company, from the history to the products and the go-to-market strategy or the future.
So that's
But
cool.
I also have to get into the nitty-gritties of what's your recruiting process look like? How many interviews are you going to hold? Because if you're going to hold 13 interviews,
what's your recommendation for people listening? Like, how many interviews should a company do before you? Because my wife in her industry before, like, they would do these interviews, like 4 interviews that were like, an hour and a half long. I'm like, how many freaking interviews are you going to have to go through? Like 5 hours of your time before these people determine. That at some point it's got to be it would be a turnoff.
It is
for
a
me.
turnoff.
Yeah.
And it's a big mistake when employers have. So
Hear
a lot
that,
of times,
employers?
a lot of times when I'm having this conversation, I'll be asking, what's your recruitment process? Who will be involved in the interviewing? Or will you be using any sort of assessments? I also like to ask, will you, like, a lot of our positions require a driver's license.
Right.
Or is someone with a DUI,
Are they considered? Are they not considered? Like,
Exactly.
what's going to make you consider what's not
So
going to make you consider?
I try to ask every single question. Now, there's
If
always
you're on the
things.
no-fly list, that probably takes you off some
John's
of the lists.
almost on a no-fly list, but that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that, because I know I think we use some recruiting firms in some capacity. We do a lot of our own interviews. We try to seek out our own candidates. I personally I don't like to interview people, but people love for me to interview our candidates, and especially like at our venues. But I interview very differently
Probably because you're trying to make a connection, have them feel an affinity with the company, so that if you guys do want them, they want you too.
Well, exactly. Well, and my process when I go to interview someone, I'm very informal, because I want to get to know the person.
You want to pull the good stuff out of them.
I want to know. I want to get to know them, their personality, their personal life, like what's going on. Like, to me, that getting to know somebody, I want to be able to vibe with somebody.
So how long does
that is
that
my
take
exact
for you?
strategy.
How long do you?
That's what.
That's my exact strategy.
Yeah.
So how long does that take?
Should
it take?
I can have.
For me, it's taken years.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've been very careful, is to try to approach people about opportunities that are actually going to be of interest and appropriate for them, and not send a job description for a sales engineer to the VP of sales, right? People don't trust you. They don't want to talk to you at that point.
Interesting, yeah.
But by the time they get to me, they've already
been
applied.
kind of pre-screened.
Yeah, they've been pre-screened, and
that is such a good strategy for you to do.
At the end of the day, I'm like, I just want to get to know them. I'm like, are you going to be built for this kind of environment? I'm very upfront.
So let's sell recruiting. So what is the benefits for a company to use a recruiter versus trying to do it on their own?
Screening process, right?
Well, and this may seem silly for me to say this, I don't tell companies or employers that I should be used for every role.
Right.
That's not my purpose. They should definitely have an internal team that focuses on recruiting for most roles. It would not be, unless there was some ongoing situation where people are given a deal, it wouldn't make sense for a company
Right.
to use an external recruiter for every role.
For every
So do
role.
you usually just do executive roles, or
Well,
or do you, what level do you recruit?
My preferred
above?
level, if you want to use compensation range, I like, because that's the most my database, most of my connections are in this range, making at least $100,000 base salary.
Right.
I'll go down a little bit, especially if it's a company I've worked for previously.
So that was going to be one of
yeah.
my questions. It's probably easier for repeat businesses that come to you because you know that company now. You might have placed
Plus they get
several people.
discounts.
Yeah. So did you hear that? Discounts.
Repeat customers
Repeat
get
customers get discounts.
So it's probably easier for you to fill that position quicker because you know so much. There's not as much outreach,
that's
right?
where if you go to another recruiting firm, I'm sure they're going to try their hardest to understand, but they're also trying to understand probably clients from 10 different industries or
Right.
Yep.
where I literally have spent the last 10 years of my life trying to learn as much about parking, what it's like to work in parking, what the future of the parking profession will look like. And
So those are questions that I'm going to ask.
and one thing that I've been so fascinated with the last 2 years is, will AI, really create job losses?
Oh yeah, that's a great.
So technology.
It's not a question. It will
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technology did replace the
Short-term.
the lower level positions. Obviously, there used to be cashiers in every booth.
Oh, it
and-
goes way before that. Let's look back
I want to hear
at the
this.
Stone Age.
Yes.
Let's then look at our progression to the Bronze Age, right?
Okay.
Then, there's thousands of years of continuous development. There has been technological advancement that has ultimately led to automation of various tasks, jobs, but that never meant there were no jobs, as Mr. Musk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Musk is saying that to create headlines. What has happened historically with every technology is that, yes, certain skills or roles might be eliminated, but the net job creation is always greater because there are new jobs that none of us can, see today that will be here in 5 years. We literally just can't.
So
understand.
I had a meeting today with a media outlet and in this office, and one of the questions was, because the technology is so incredible, there has to be still interaction between the technology and the consumer. And that was their point that drove, because we're so technological here, like everything right down to appeals is all software and automated, but there's still
but there's
interaction.
people behind it.
Right.
There
Does
is
it work
still
without a person?
That's right. It doesn't.
Exactly. It does not.
Like
And that's
with
what they were. That's what they were
ChatGPT.
focused on and wanted to see, like, what is the interaction? Because some people, as I can tell you, there's these unique, I call them exceptions, these situations where people get caught up in the technology of like an automated appeal process, and they don't get to tell their story that actually it's that one situation that's unique that they got swept up in the normal process of
Situations happen all the time.
and those are the ones that blow
Absolutely.
up.
I get parking tickets more than probably anybody in this industry. I get parking tickets. I get
I know
speeding tickets.
you're on our hot list.
I have, yeah. And so I know that for sure because there's always these situations. Like I travel all the time. My registration's always expired. It's this whole thing.
You're speaking my language
Yeah.
or my experience
Yeah.
this fall.
Yeah.
Expired registration and my first speeding ticket ever.
Wow, you have a speeding ticket.
Georgetown.
Wow. Oh,
Oh.
not Morrison?
In Georgetown, Colorado? Oh, no.
I had to go to court because my registration was so expired.
How many months?
'Cause you don't
Let's
drive
see
a lot,
who
right?
was worse, you or I. How many months or what year was what?
How many years?
Well, is it months or years? Years was expired.
It'd be
Mine was,
easier for me to calculate years.
Oh my God.
Because, okay, here's
You don't
embarrassing.
drive a lot,
I
though.
don't drive a lot. Coming from a different state, like in New York, you
Yeah.
have to get an inspection every year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Like you don't do that in Colorado. I didn't realize you did it every year. I thought you like did your emissions. So it was 3 years.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
okay. So I'm about, I was what, 7 months expired. And I didn't know.
I aspired to that.
Yeah. I didn't know until I got a ticket at the airport. And I was like, no, there's no way. I was like, there's absolutely no way. I was like, someone stole my sticker. Because my boss,
Yeah.
Joe, his sticker was stolen just a few weeks before
Like on the
mine.
back of the license plate?
Yeah, at the airport.
I never thought about
Yeah.
that.
And so I was like, nope, there's no way. And then I went and I was, online. They, so savvy
You had
nowadays.
to pay a penalty, right?
I don't know, probably. And so I was like, wait,
In New
what?
York, you can.
I was like, mine was expired for 7 months.
In New York,
That's
you can lose
insane.
your license.
Do you
for-
know what I got to experience? Do you know how expensive it is to register your car in Colorado?
Very expensive. Yes,
Yeah, we know.
Very expensive. Insane.
I got to re-register it.
Oh,
So what is that? You still had to pay a penalty after the 3.
I didn't pay a penalty, but to re-register it was $1,000.
yeah. It's insane.
okay.
It's an insane amount of money. I'm like,
So,
if I,
so in essence, it kind of was a penalty.
Now, Georgetown was an amazing municipality, and if you compare, your fines to what you get in New York,
Right. It's no comparison.
the mountain towns have amazing municipalities like Idaho Springs, Georgetown.
it had a
Breath,
really
they're
cute
great.
courtroom. I'd never been to court before.
Yes.
Right.
Well, was it like a cute little town hall?
Yeah.
Oh God, I love that.
It
My
was-
first,
And the judge was
judge
so
is- and the
nice. She
judge
was
is
like, just make
part-time.
sure you slow down.
And they're probably part-time, right? They have another job and they do.
I
town
didn't get to know her
judge.
that well.
Yeah.
I have to tell a story really, really quick. So just let me tell my story before we move
Absolutely.
on. But in college, my hometown was 130 miles from my college, from where I was going to college. And I had spent the weekend with my parents. I was late for class one morning and I was going 95 in a construction zone. And I grew up on the reservation. And so just to give you some background there. And I got pulled over and I ended up having to go to tribal court. And
Ooh.
tribal
Feel
court
a
is a
little
lot.
That sounds
Yellowstone.
hardcore.
Yeah, I
Feels
was
a
like
little
They're going to make you feel
Yellowstone-ish.
bad.
terrified. I was like, I had to go to tribal court. They didn't
Shame.
they didn't give me an option to pay for my ticket. They're like, because you were going this whatever. So long story short, I had to go to tribal court back on this reservation, and I remember pulling up to what the courthouse was, and I was like, am I at someone's house, or is this or is this where
They were holding
am I-
court in the house.
it was a trailer. It was a double wide trailer. And I remember walking in and I was like, I am terrified right now. Like, what am I gonna have to go to jail? But the judge was so nice, and he was like, Miss Crain, don't you? He's like, I'm gonna let you off, but don't you think that just because we're out here in a double wide trailer that we're in the dark about anything that's gonna any other tickets that you get? And I was like, noted. And I've never sped through this town.
I
ever
wouldn't
again.
either.
Yeah, I was like, got it. This was like some undercover shit. I was like, got it. Won't ever happen again.
So, as a recruiter in the parking, what are the tools that a recruiter uses? So, you can only 3 bullet points. So, what are your top tools
You mean
that
technology
you use?
tools? or-
Anything that you
'Cause
use. So,
what
somebody
I
calls
use-
you, a company calls you today, they sign a contract. So, now you have to find somebody. What are your top 3 tools that you use to find the right person?
Well,
Not to put you on the spot.
my
but
own
I'm-
database.
Okay, so you have a database. Okay.
Yes.
And where does that information come from? Is that like special to the recruiters, or is
Special
So
to Kathleen.
sounds pretty scary?
part of what's helped me in the last 5 years is joining what we call a recruitment network. So it's basically purchasing power, where there's about 180 recruiting agencies with different niches come together and we negotiate contracts for technology that, like someone like me, I don't have the same purchasing power as Corn and Ferry or something like that.
A bigger firm, yeah.
So I get some really amazing tools for sourcing, So I use an AI sourcing tool that aggregates information from LinkedIn, Zoom Info, any public information site.
Zoom Info we use here as a sales tool, but it's very expensive.
Right. So I wouldn't be able to afford that. In addition to my biggest single expense, but I will never get rid of it as much as I would like to, is LinkedIn Recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not LinkedIn. Like it's like there's
It's
a
not
sales.
like, there's premium. There's all kinds of different paid.
It's the sales navigator for recruiting on steroids.
Interesting. So
and a lot more expensive.
So what does that do that's different than an average LinkedIn? It just gives you more
filters, information I can filter on, like how long have you worked for your employer?
Oh,
I can filter you on that.
Yeah.
So
How
back
long
to the
have
Boolean.
you been?
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of Boolean, I would use before, right?
So now this is a little more advanced.
I know, but I'm still nostalgic for Boolean a little
See,
bit.
and you, but
So you have
love it.
so you have shared service that you can team up with. So one bullet point is you team up with some of the larger firms and you get a database.
Well, they're all independent firms, but when you put us together,
then you
actually
have,
matter.
Then and then you have more purchasing power. So you have a database.
because some of my tools, like there's a tool called Hire Easy. Hire Easy. It was previously another name. It's an AI sourcing tool that does the aggregation. Not only does it do the aggregation, but it also does salary predictions.
oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty great.
So you've got that, and then LinkedIn, and then what's your third?
I would say my third tool is just research.
Research and going to the shows and interacting with people, is that
That
part
has
of
been
the
amazing.
research?
And I don't think that would, it is part of the research, but it's also just relationship building.
Right.
And the parking industry, one of the things that stood out to me the most, I had worked in investment banking, feral cats, and people are not so excited to share with new people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am a huge believer in the idea that I'm against that idea of scarcity.
Right.
I think success can be, full of abundance, right?
Yeah.
And the parking professionals, especially like when I first came to the industry, I just couldn't believe how free people were with educating, sharing their experiences. There weren't as many women in like leadership roles in 2014. There's not enough today, but
You're one of many women that have said that on this show.
And not all the women are as helpful, because I think a lot of times women are only worried, like they have to be worried about themselves. They have to figure out how they're going to make it. So they're not going to take a risk necessarily. But then there are some women who were just so amazing, and men too. Like there's just so many friendly people that just are open to having a conversation.
Dani says that all the time.
Yeah,
about parking.
Yeah, I think there are so many incredible like women leaders. And male leaders. Like I fully like am in support of that and believe that. I do have a question that just kind of popped into my mind, but out of all the recruiting that you do, what is the percentage, like, do any companies, we don't have to name names or anything, but like, is there a percentage that request for women leadership? Like, is that something that they're like, we're looking for more
Good question.
female presence, more, female. Well, this is women in parking. We want to, this is a big episode around women in parking as well. And so, what does that look like? Are you seeing more companies want to hire more women leadership or not?
I would say it happens. It's not super frequent. It's usually like, oh, we don't have any women on the team, so we better do it, right? Yeah. It's not really a strategic goal of theirs, really. It's more like, let's not look bad.
Yeah.
So that's so So how does that make you feel? I mean, what should it be? Should it be just we're looking for this position and we're open to anybody who's qualified?
Or do we want a certain person
so
in
when
this
somebody
position?
calls you up and says, we don't have women leadership in our organization, I need a woman, right? Does that turn you off, or what is that?
Well, if someone had that as a conversation, I would think, they're going to be awful to work with. I'm not going to have success here. So,
Right.
no, thank you.
That's my first impression. Now they could be just legitimately
Clueless?
woke up and one day and said, wow, we
but
really don't have,
Them saying that to me just
Yeah,
says
it's probably-
I'm totally clueless, not like I woke up. It means I have no idea what the real problem is, and I'm going to try to put a Band-Aid on it and hope for the best.
Yeah, so that's probably not a good thing. So we got your 3 tools down. So do you have so you have employers that search you out? Do you have employees? So do you take both?
Well, like a candidate?
Yeah. So if I'm looking for a
gosh.
job, and do you have people that
Do
call
you
you up?
recruit employees to hire for companies?
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know.
So
if
in
that's-
other words,
that's
an
a recruiting.
employee, you may not have let's just say you're working on 3 different companies and you're looking for specifics, but then you're also getting calls from employees who want to leave.
individuals.
Do you do that kind of business as well?
Well, I mean, I work with people, but I like in terms of where I get paid, it is by a company.
It's by a
and
company.
if a recruiter ever takes money from a candidate or is suggesting it, run away.
Yeah, so
it's
I
a
wasn't-
scam. No one can guarantee you that they're going to place you at a job. That is
So
completely.
that's good information. But I was more so asking, are you just focused on if you didn't get do you try to place employees with employers who might not be reaching out to you?
Well,
So,
so
that was my question. Can employees initiate? Not that you're going to charge them, but do you say, okay, Dani, you want a new job?
It's
I have a
called-
great network of companies. I'm going to find you a job, knowing that. So that's a different type of
literally,
business.
this is something called most placeable candidate.
Okay.
And this is something I've been working on a bit. I have not outwardly marketed it, but it's in the process.
Okay.
So basically,
You hear
it's
that, folks?
confidential, highlighting a candidate, going through the candidate's background, what they're looking for, pay range, the geography, that type of stuff. Yeah, so I'm working on that because it is it's really useful for both the candidate and the
Exactly.
employer.
And your
there's-
company.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Like,
you're
that makes
you're actually taking on some work without any guarantee that you're going to find them a job, but you're still going through the effort. But you have an extensive Rolodex with companies that you probably could find the person a job, which ultimately gets you a job.
It's
right?
actually no extra effort.
Does that make sense?
Because I will take unless you are done something egregious where I don't want to work with you, which is not often, right? Like
Right.
I like people. I like parking people.
Parking.
And so I will always want to find out, even if I talked to you 6 months ago, I want to find out what is your current needs? Like how active are you? What would be of interest to you? That is all information that I keep on board. And I always tell my candidates, because candidates always reach out to me and I don't always have a job right then for them, that I will reach out to them and I am never offended if they're not interested in the job.
Right.
I would rather ask, not, silly
Right.
asks,
Right.
but I would rather ask. I'm never offended if you're not interested, but I am definitely networking and marketing to both sides of the thing because I
Interesting.
need one for the other to
That's
work.
right.
Exactly. Exactly.
That was my
It's
question.
called efficiency.
Yeah.
I mean, are you super excited because every candidate isn't your dream, but also guess what? People grow,
Right.
they develop. I mean, I think back to my when I was working 22 for the investment bank, and I definitely did things that I was like,
Our industry is so unique in a way that we're progressing so fast. Every day is different in parking, right? Like we're not going to come into the industry knowing everything, and we're not
No.
going to be in the industry for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. and still think that we know the same thing that we even knew yesterday.
Right.
Like, we
And if
learn
you claim
something
to
new every
do
day.
so, I would probably think less of you, right? If you claim
100%.
like, you know,
This isn't
So-
isn't like a straightforward industry, right?
Right.
Whereas like I don't know, I don't want to name one that I think right off the top of my head, but it's not like I don't know, like accounting where numbers are numbers. This equals this because of this. Like parking is it's not
it's nuanced verticals,
absolutely
geography. Like it is not there. You can't get more nuances.
So the best situation. So now you've been hired. We've gone through the hiring. The company hires you. You find a candidate. What does the post placement look like for recruiting? So is it just, yep, I found you your person. They're hired. You get your paycheck. You just ride away in the sunset.
I
or
provide a replacement.
right away in the sunset.
I provide a guarantee.
Yeah, is there a post action that recruiters do? So like, do you follow up with the candidate after they're hired to see how they're doing? Do
I
you
always
follow
try
up
to
with
touch
the employer?
base.
Like, what does that look like?
And one of the great parts of the industry is that a lot of times I get, even if I didn't know the candidate in person, before I place them, I always get to meet them, usually like at the next conference or whatever. And, you know, because guess what? Here's a little secret. A lot of my candidates I place become clients.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
But
So
that says a lot about you too. Is that like people just love wanting to work with you?
So there's a post action. You kind of see how they're doing. So here's just a question. So what if you place somebody in like the first? Is there a time period there where what if the employer just it doesn't work out and they're gone?
Yeah.
Do you have to?
I have a replacement guarantee. So I don't provide a refund, but I will work to replace the person who didn't work out. Now, in
Is
the
there
10
a time
years,
period
so
of
with
that? By the
60
time
days, but if they
60
don't.
days.
Well,
Okay. That was my question.
No, for the first year, I provide some sort of guarantee. Like as
Wow.
Oh,
So
that's
12
amazing.
months. That's
now like okay.
That's not typical, is it?
Oh,
Is that unique
but it
to
doesn't
Laney?
mean I actually got this from this is a very common
Okay.
method among recruiters that I work
Okay.
with. And it is not like, okay, so the person leaves within a year, I'm necessarily going to just replace them. So if it's within the first 30 to 60 days, I will work for 60 days to replace them.
Okay.
If I don't find someone, you get 100% of the fee you paid credited to either that role continuing or some other role.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. That makes sense.
So what in your experience, how often does that occur? And it's
In the 10 years,
yeah. So that's probably
I've done 163 placements now. It's happened twice.
So that's a good. So that I was just gonna say,
It's a good
this is
stat,
probably
yeah.
like a rekindle. I used to be a volunteer fireman in upstate New York. The worst thing that can happen to a fire company is you get a call back from the fire that you put out because it rekindled. And so the rest of the county,
I didn't know that.
everybody knows that, oh my God, this fire department put out a fire and then
And
it
they actually-
rekindled.
how often?
That is
like,
embarrassing.
How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen often, but I was on this particular department. It
Yeah.
might have happened once, but it's an embarrassment.
Well, yeah, you didn't
It's
do
an
your job.
embarrassment because it's like, oh my God, they're being called back out to the same
And I will say,
fire.
Yes.
I was horrified.
That's why you'll see fire companies stay on like a scene for
Oh.
a long period of time after
To make
because
sure.
they're making sure that fire is actually out. And that's why there's so much water
Interesting.
damage. When you have a fire, there's a lot of water that's put down on that fire because there's coals and hot coals that you can't see.
Or that
and so
foam.
Yeah.
that's why you'll see a fire
did not
department
know
there.
that.
They're like, God, what are they doing? They're like
I
still
learned
here.
something new today.
They're still here hours after the fire. There's no fire, but they're still putting water down. It's because they don't want to rekindle. It's embarrassing. Trust me.
It's going to be in the news, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, everybody can hear it, and other departments can hear it.
The
and
fire
it's just
department's
like, oh
called
my
again,
God. It's
same
like, oh my
fire.
God, they're going to the same house. Anyway, so recruiting and then having to refill that position, I would say, is like a rekindle.
I do
would-
not feel good when that happens.
Yeah, that
and
can't
then,
be.
unfortunately, there has been times where I placed a candidate in a role and they're not happy.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
doesn't make me feel good
So that's
either.
part of what
Right.
you laid out. That's your outreach, right? Making sure that who you're working for has a good culture. So you're not just out for a paycheck.
Well, and
because you don't want to rekindle, right?
I do have a blacklist.
John's got the white list. Kathleen's got the black list.
That's right. Did you hear that? We got a blacklist.
Both employers and candidates.
Interesting.
That is so. That's.
And we won't ask you for the
No. Of course
blacklist because that's confidential.
That makes sense.
That
That makes
does.
sense because it's not at this like.
Well, because if they think if they're unhappy with me because they think the placement wasn't right, that's bad for my reputation.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But also, a lot of times hires aren't 100% happy festive things is because promises are broken.
Yeah.
And that's what offer letters are for,
Well,
right? I mean, they have
promises
to be.
are broken. Company culture is not great. Like a lot of I've been there. I mean,
Let's hear that story.
I just it's unfortunate when you can believe in a company so much. Not even just the company, but your leadership and things just aren't fulfilled the way that they said that they were going to be, right?
Right.
But you've already done the work. You've already shown your loyalty. You've already done all of these things. And at the end of the day, I truly believe if most of the time, I would say maybe 80-90% of the time, the reason why people leave is because of those failures within a company.
Yeah, people usually leave
The
because of
manager.
leadership and the manager.
Yeah.
But
And-
I always tell people, there's roadblocks in every organization.
That is true.
And so you have to find your way around roadblocks. And, I've had many bad bosses in my career. And if I had just retreated and gone away, who knows where I would be. So you have to figure out how to maneuver because you're going to come across bad bosses no matter what organization.
You're absolutely
It could be
right.
the greatest organization culture ever, but there's still that bad person. And you have to find a way to get around that
Roadblocks
person.
are,
And usually those people wind up working for those people, right? The person that goes around that, I call it a gate arm. If you get around that gate arm, once you're by that gate arm's probably going to be working for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would say the one thing there is you're absolutely right. We are going to have to work with people we don't always get along with. We're not all going to like each other.
Right.
It's if your coworkers or your boss or policies or whatever are so detrimental to your overall well-being,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you have to call the line.
I agree.
Or draw the line.
I agree. And you can tell that if it's typically if you've got a bad boss, it could be unique to just that bad boss, and you'll tell that by the leadership, or you could say, "Oh my God, this is a bad boss," and the other 4 that I'm going to have are going to be bad as I go up. Then that's time to pull the plug.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had a whole episode on this, right?
Yeah. But I think this episode is pretty unique to. This is it. This is great.
Absolutely.
We should have had this a long time ago.
I agree, John.
Jeez.
I agree too. And honestly, I didn't know that you were Colorado based, so that is also something.
I'm basically a native. I moved here in 2016.
So we didn't say. So you were in Hoboken. What drove you to Colorado?
Yeah. Great question.
I didn't have to be in Hoboken anymore. I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
I had lived in Toronto previously.
I mean, you're a New York native.
Yeah.
So why did you come to Colorado?
I didn't have to be in New York anymore.
I know, but you've lived in Canada.
Okay, so
you've lived in a lot of
visited-
places. You picked Colorado
I
for a
had
reason.
New York City is my favorite. So
I do love New York. I think I would prefer to experience it as a visitor now, as I've gotten older.
Older. You're
But-
still young though.
When I moved out here, I didn't have to be in Hoboken anymore, which was great. It's super expensive. Love the town. Great food. New York City.
You can see New York City from Hoboken,
the view
right?
from my terrace was the new World Trade Center.
Yeah.
it
That's
was
pretty
great.
cool.
Yeah. Well, also the PATH station was right outside, so the trains were always going.
So you picked. So you picked Colorado.
I picked 2 places to visit. Portland.
Ooh, Portland's
Denver.
weird.
I had never been to either.
That's their motto, right? Portland's weird. Yeah.
I'd never been to either.
Smells like urine.
I visit Portland first. I wasn't a big fan of the city. I liked Oregon. What
Love
really
Oregon.
killed it for me was when I went to get some coffee. It was one of the pour-overs, and I asked for cream. And they sneered at me.
Oh.
They were like,
Wow.
I was like, nope.
Portland's beautiful, though. That whole state is Bend.
No, I
and
would live like Mount Hood
Oregon,
area.
all that. Yeah.
Eugene and stuff. Like Oregon's beautiful. But I didn't love Portland. Didn't think I was going to love Colorado. I fell in love with it. Like,
So what did you fall in love with?
It's hard not to.
I did very Colorado things when I came to visit. I whitewater rafted,
Yeah, so-
Hiking.
I went to the 4th of July parade in Golden. Little did I know I would literally live right there. I love Colorado. It's the
So
blue
you go
sky.
up to the mountains a lot. You horseshoe. Not horseshoe.
Snowshoe. I was like, wait, you got another hobby you want to talk about?
I'm almost
I
done
make-
with a picture. Maybe
I
that's
weld
why.
my own horseshoes.
I was like, that's a horseshoeing, I think, or horse.
I do love
horseshoe.
horseback riding. Have either of you ever done the Gardens of the God tour horseback riding?
No, I don't. I don't do horseback riding.
I did horseback
Traumatic
riding when I was
experience
little,
when I was
but
a child.
it is
Oh, I'm sorry.
scary if you're
it's
not.
terrifying.
If you haven't grown up with horses,
No.
it's like, holy shit! What if this thing takes off?
Yes. Oh, I've been bucked off.
Oh my
have you?
gosh!
Yes.
Okay,
That
I'm
could be
not.
life threatening.
That could,
I
you can
know.
break your back. You can
Oh
die.
yeah. Thank goodness it happened when I was a child and not now, because I would.
You're a little more nimble.
I would break every bone in my body. But
Okay,
yeah.
so as we wrap this up, what is your advice to people that are listening? So 2 parts. What's the advice to employers? And what's the advice to people that are looking for jobs?
And then I have a follow-up question to that. I'll let you answer those 2 though.
Wait, so the second one was what's
Your advice to
employers looking for candidates in this industry.
make yourself attractive to the candidate. It is not a power struggle. The candidate is not lucky or, shouldn't be at your beck and whim for any reason just because you gave them a job. Because that's not going to lead to a productive, happy, fulfilled worker. And that's just going to hurt your bottom line.
Right.
And then
And should they use a recruiter like yourself?
Absolutely.
All right.
Especially if they don't know someone off the top of their head and are, not making much traction, come talk to me.
Right. You hear that? And
Or-
they go www.laneysolutions.com. Yeah. Did you hear that?
And there's also situations like if you're trying to fill a role confidentially and you don't want everyone to know.
Oh.
I'm great for
So
that.
that is another
Oh, that's
reason to use a recruiter. So a situation would be if you're trying to replace somebody who's there and you don't want to put an Indeed ad
Or for
out.
that PPP, the P3 thing, because often when there's, financial stuff involved, literally, I got someone to fly across the country to interview for a job. They didn't know who it was with.
Interesting.
oh wow. Oh, that's incredible.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is hard.
That's incredible. It's very hard.
Okay, so now what's the advice
So-
to employees
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go. I'll follow up with my question.
So when somebody's looking for a job, they're not happy. What's your
not-
advice to them?
Just apply to job postings. And if you do, if you're applying to a job posting, include a cover letter where you specifically explain point by point of what's listed in the job description, of what your experience and how you're capable of doing that.
That's good
Like
advice.
literally every resume you submit to a job posting should be unique to that job.
Interesting.
I like that.
It's a lot of work, but it creates results.
Right. Interesting. And the resume should be 1 page or
No.
2 page, 3
Unless
page?
you're like 1 year out of college or 1 year into
So I was
work.
told a long time ago, don't have like 3 pages to your resume.
Yeah. So once upon a time, there was a thing called a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
God.
That's
Thanks,
great. I like
Kathleen.
You're
Yeah,
welcome, John.
That
I
makes
also
sense.
responded to ads from the newspaper, so that shows.
I don't think I even ever did that.
Yeah, I know that the newspaper didn't exist when.
Oh, I read the newspaper.
Yeah.
But I
That's
don't think
how
I looked for.
employers used to post ads.
yeah.
Well, right. Yeah.
It was expensive.
There wasn't an internet back then.
I know.
So my question to you, Kathleen, because being one of few C-suite women in the industry, and you actually owning your own business, what is your advice to women trying to maybe even start their own company or trying to make that C-suite level position? Like, what is your advice to women in this industry?
Always get back up.
Interesting.
That's incredible.
What does that mean?
That means, well, in my opinion, the biggest, differentiator between success and not success is the person who experiences success just got up one more time. I mean, it's obviously not that simple, but literally, you're going to fail. And you know what? That is how you learn. That provides, that is what is going to be valued in you, is when you fail, have learned something, and then can provide, expertise there.
Yes,
Right.
I agree. And I think I just want to add to that too. It's because I think women in male dominant industries are shut down way more than any male, right? And it's about
So this is male dominated. We're ending right now.
Well,
God damn it.
That's kind of
I'm kidding.
it's about it's also about not being discouraged about
or dismissed too.
Yeah.
That
but
is huge.
When you feel dismissed, when you feel any of those things, it's about getting back up and getting back at that table, getting to sit at the table again.
And not letting people devalue you, because unfortunately I've had experiences where people aren't, as I wish them to be.
Right.
Yep.
It's not because of you.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's all good stuff. We should have done this a long time ago. What do you think?
Well, you schedule the interviews.
Yeah. Not all the time.
Not all the time. You're right.
You're taking that role in 25, right?
That's my goal.
Automate your scheduling.
There you go. Some things can be automated. Some things.
Yeah.
Well, Kathleen, it has been such a pleasure. And before we go, I want to give you the opportunity. Do you have any questions for John or I? We're turning this around.
Why didn't you start this podcast earlier?
We didn't have drinks.
At the View House.
Yeah.
You know what this means? You just need to drink more.
Yeah.
Well, I think some people would disagree.
Yeah. Anyways, it's been a pleasure, and we're happy to have you on board as a sponsor for 2025. So Laney Solutions is your place to go if you want to hire good people, and if you need confidentiality, Kathleen's your gal.
Kathleen, thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
you
both. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.